Leave the money and get out quickly. Charlotte's harsh words saddened me. We may not get along, but we're family after all. How could she say something so heartless? As I felt lost, Thomas grinned and said, "Well, that went as planned. Mission accomplished." At that moment, I had no idea the chaos that was about to unfold. My name is Violet. I met my husband Thomas at work. I work in the office of a shipping company while Thomas is a truck driver. My first impression was that he's a robust guy, both physically and in personality. He's good at his job and kind to his colleagues. However, he wasn't so adept at the romantic game. Whether it was making a move or proposing, he was like a pitcher who only threw fastballs, no change-ups. But I prefer a straightforward man over a guy who thinks he's a playboy. As our relationship progressed and tensions eased, I found him quite interesting. Above all, he gave me a sense of security that I could rely on him. We got married and were blessed with 2 children. Our son and daughter have moved out and live on their own. Now, Thomas, Dad, and I live in a large house. Mom passed away 5 years ago due to illness. Thomas and I still work together at the same shipping company. Thomas has been promoted to a supervisor and now handles the dispatching. We had a happy marriage, but one worry was my brother Jason. Dad is soft on Jason. Jason has been dreaming of becoming a rock singer since he was a teenager. He's still chasing his dream, pompadour and all, no matter his age. I won't discourage anyone from following their dreams. However, when he runs out of money, he comes to borrow from Dad, and Dad, being soft, lends him the money. Dad, lending money is fine, but has he ever paid you back? Violet, when you lend money, you should do it with the intention of giving. That means you shouldn't expect it back. Remember that. But Jason thinks he'll somehow make it. He's underestimating life's challenges. Isn't that risky? When I was young, I dreamed of becoming a novelist. But Victoria's parents said if I was going to marry her, I needed a stable job. So I gave up my dream and chose to marry. I don't regret getting married, but I do regret giving up my dream. That was the first time I'd ever heard about my dad's younger days. So that's why I want to support Jason's dreams. But it doesn't seem like Jason's putting in much effort. Do you really think he can achieve his dreams while goofing off all day? Mountain climbing isn't just about conquering the peak. Every step you take along the way is part of the story. Well, you sound like a poet. Makes sense since you wanted to be a novelist. Come on, you're making me blush with such direct praise. I'm not praising you. Initially, I was worried that Jason had some dirt on Dad and was blackmailing him, but it turns out Dad also chases dreams, so he probably understands Jason's desire to escape reality. One day, Jason brought a woman home. Let me introduce you. This is Charlotte. From her name, I expected a dainty woman. She was, well, big. Hi, I'm Charlotte. I'm Violet, the sister. Nice to meet you. Charlotte is 5 years younger than me, but much larger in build. Our first impression of her wasn't great. She was curt to both me and Dad, leaving us with the impression that she had poor manners. Eventually, Jason and Charlotte got married, so she became my younger sister-in-law. Neither Jason nor Charlotte held full-time jobs. They were always quitting their part-time jobs in a huff. Charlotte practices jiu-jitsu and has a short temper, often bragging about putting her arrogant bosses or seniors in joint locks. I just hope she never gets arrested for it. Jason brags about stories that aren't brag-worthy, like headbutting a disrespectful boss. 2 kinds of stories I really can't stand: bragging about bad behavior in the past, bragging about fights. I think many women also find these kinds of bragging a turn-off. One day, Jason came home to borrow money from Dad again, and I finally spoke up. Jason, you're working, right? Why don't you have any money? I got into an argument with a plant manager just because I forgot to put away a card. I told him it was workplace harassment. He yelled again, so I gave him a flying knee kick to the chin. Charlotte seemed pleased, asking, "Total KO?" I decided that if Dad wouldn't say it, I would. Every workplace has people you won't get along with. But you know, even people I initially disliked turned out to be decent later on. I've often been glad I didn't pick a fight. You and I lead different lives. My pride is taller than the One World Trade Center, so yelling at me is practically asking for a flying knee. I couldn't believe my ears when Charlotte cut in. You're siding with a boss who harasses people? That's not what I'm saying. Oh, so you're lecturing me. You better be ready for this. Ready? Want to take this outside? Or here's fine too. I was flabbergasted. What is she, a teenager? Feeling threatened, I walked away. I couldn't believe she was actually picking a fight. Jason didn't intervene. Would he have stopped if it were his wife fighting his sister? Getting hurt would be the last straw. I knew I had to watch out for that couple. When I turned 50, Dad got sick and was hospitalized. It wasn't long before we had to say goodbye. People said he lived a long life at 80, but I didn't feel that way. The era of living to 100. I still wanted to talk about many things with Dad. When Thomas and I were alone, he said, "Violet, actually, Lawrence." What? Never mind. What do you mean, never mind? Just tell me. Later. Before much time had passed since the funeral, Charlotte approached me. Did Lawrence leave a will? A will? Probably not. He was hospitalized so suddenly. And if there's no will, then the inheritance. You're already talking about inheritance? I guess you're not even sad. How dare you? Want me to put you in the hospital? Try me. When I raised my voice, Charlotte grabbed my arm in anger. I was taken aback but didn't want to apologize. Should we call the police? What are you doing? You made me sound like a monster for bringing up the inheritance, so I thought I'd teach you a life lesson with an arm lock. You're the one who's wrong, Violet. Enough! Don't yell. What are we going to do about the inheritance? I was momentarily speechless, but then I glared at Jason. Jason, aren't you sad that Dad passed away? That's irrelevant. Stop calling me stupid. I don't want to be called stupid by someone as stupid as you. What did you just say? The atmosphere was tense until Thomas arrived. What's going on here? Wife, you better tell your husband to raise the kids right. Those words crossed the line. I'll pass that message right along to Jason. Good on you. I'm fed up with you, Violet. This makes my decision easier. Decision? Jason dropped a bombshell. I'm the eldest son. That means the house and Dad's inheritance are all mine. Are you out of your mind? I'm perfectly sane, Jason said, stone-faced. Just as we were stunned by his audacity, Thomas spoke up. Violet, let's try to keep a cool head. We're not making any progress. Fine. We sat down at the table to hash it out. The inheritance is all mine and Charlotte's. Violet, I want you to give up your claim. That's ridiculous. Our dad isn't rich. If we split it between two households, there won't be much left. There's only two of Dad's children, me and Jason, so it should be divided between us. But Jason scowled. Look, Violet, you and Thomas both have jobs and are doing fine. I'm the one pursuing my dreams, so I'm the one who needs the money. Why don't you get a job, Jason? Let me finish. Living in the house means no rent, and with the inheritance, I can take on the world. Dad was cheering for me, you know. The best way to honor him is to pack Carnegie Hall. You can't even pack the local park. What if I do fill Carnegie Hall? Will you put your money where your mouth is? What are you talking about? I seriously considered calling the police. Thomas, what do you say? Can you give in? I cannot. Then Thomas calmly asked Jason, So, you're asking Violet to relinquish her claim? Yes. And you're okay with that, Jason? What are you talking about? Of course it's not okay. At that point, Charlotte glared at me. Shut up. You've been yapping like a puppy this whole time. Such words should not be tolerated. When I glared at her, Charlotte glared back with an angry face. Is it cute to yap like a puppy only until you're in your 20s? Stop pretending to be a young girl. It's embarrassing for a 50-year-old hag. Take that back. I won't tolerate insults. Thomas, wasn't it? You should have set her straight. What a useless couple you are. At this point, I couldn't keep quiet. If you weren't as big as a hippo, I'd have slapped you a long time ago. For a moment, Charlotte looked dumbfounded, but then turned to Jason. Did your sister just call me a hippo? Violet, apologize while you still can. I'll apologize when Charlotte does. Enough, both of you. Violet, calm down. Fine. Let's proceed with the disinheritance, Violet. I looked at Thomas with wide eyes. but something in his gaze told me he had a plan. Why else would he agree to such an unreasonable demand? I had no choice but to trust Thomas. So, Jason, just to confirm, you're fine with Violet being disinherited? I've been saying that. Stop making me repeat myself. It's annoying. What an infuriating couple. A wife who acts younger than she is, and a husband who thinks he's smart but is actually dumb. Leave the money and move out already. Charlotte's harsh words saddened me. Aren't we still family, despite our differences? How could she say such merciless things? Why should we be the ones to leave? I couldn't agree to this. We'll find a new place soon, but we have belongings. Please give us a bit more time. If you take too long, I'll throw everything outside. Try it, and I'll call the police. Think I'll be scared if you mention the police? I'm not afraid. Call the Marines if you want to arrest me. Unable to contain my anger, I stepped outside. I wonder if Dad is also at fault. Thomas smiled at my confusion. It worked. Our plan was a success. What? These moments make me thankful for our savings. With savings, you don't need to borrow money. Even with zero debt, there are still substantial monthly expenses: rent, utilities, food, taxes. Taking on more debt would naturally make things tougher. I've always made it a point to avoid loans, pay in full for what I buy, and save a bit each month. Years of this kind of effort mean we won't be in a bind when emergencies happen. Maybe Jason set a bad example. He lives impulsively, and when he's out of money, he turns to Dad. It was one thing when Dad was working, but he had no problem borrowing even after Dad retired. I always tell my kids how important it is to save, so they don't end up like that. Thomas and I settled into our new condo. Once we'd finished unpacking, Thomas said, "Let's consult a lawyer first." A lawyer? To initiate the renunciation of inheritance. Are we really giving it up? That's when Thomas finally told me what he had almost mentioned before. While playing chess with Lawrence, he quietly mentioned that he lost all his savings and is in debt. What? Because of Jason? Yes. That made them even more unforgivable. Maybe that couple also shortened Dad's life. You're not entirely right, but you're close. Huh? Thomas told me something even more shocking. Charlotte had yelled loudly from behind Dad and pushed him with both hands. It wasn't just a one-time prank. It had happened multiple times. Dad started fearing it was an attempt to induce a heart attack and couldn't say anything when Jason came to borrow money. I never thought they'd go that far. In other words, Lawrence had much more debts than assets. You get what I'm saying? Yes, now I get it. Inheritors receive not just assets, but also debt. If the debt exceeds the assets, you can renounce the inheritance. Let's ask the lawyer. That's the best course. We consulted a lawyer and successfully renounced the inheritance. Just as I thought they might show up, Jason and his wife barged into our new condo. Violet, you set us up, didn't you? Set you up? What are you talking about? Don't play dumb. There's no inheritance from Dad, just debt. You knew, didn't you? I had no idea. This won't end with just an arm lock. Be ready for a chokehold. I calmly took out my mobile phone. Hello, is this the police? What are you doing? Charlotte grabbed my phone and shut it off. Violet, how are you going to take responsibility for this? Then Thomas stepped in. Jason, I recall asking you multiple times if it's okay to relinquish the inheritance, right? So you knew it was drowning in debt, didn't you? I had no idea. Whenever Jason needed money, Lawrence would lend it without a second thought. He gave out big amounts like it was nothing. I assumed Lawrence must be well off. Jason was at a loss for words when Charlotte interjected. Nice try, but you're not weaseling your way out of this. We inherited those debts. You two need to do something about it. What responsibility are you talking about? My spouse and I are not responsible for any of this. Hey, are you going to do something about this or not? Threats won't work on me. Or should we lay it all out for a third play? I'll share every detail of what happened. Jason, are you okay with that? How would I know that Dad went into debt just to give Jason money? If I knew, I would have stopped it. Do you even realize you shortened Dad's life? Unable to respond, Jason stayed silent, but Charlotte was defiant. If you're going to say that, are you okay with both of you ending up in the hospital? Enough of this nonsense. If you lay a hand on me or coerce me, it's jail time. Your threats don't work on me. You're 45 and talking like some high school delinquent. Charlotte smirked, glanced back, and looked at Thomas again. Wait, were those lines aimed at me? Right after saying it, you coerce me? Coercion is a serious crime, you know. You won't get probation. Idiot! Are you a judge now? It's complex to decide whether probation applies in any crime. Don't talk nonsense when you know nothing. Seeing Charlotte's tirade, Thomas turned to Jason. Jason, are you okay with this? Charlotte, just shut up for a second. Excuse me. Who are you telling to shut up? Feeling something dangerous in Charlotte's menacing glare, I said, if you want to fight, do it outside. I won't allow it in my house. Let's go back for now. As Jason stepped out into the hallway, Charlotte followed. I quickly closed the door and locked it. I could hear their arguing voices, but I was more concerned about causing a disturbance in the neighborhood. Did you just tell me to shut up? What are you going to do if I call the police? Don't worry, I'll call an ambulance in a minute. A few seconds later, I heard Jason's screams from down the hall, but I pretended not to know him. Immediately after that, I heard what sounded like a dying scream, but it had nothing to do with me. Jason and Charlotte had insulted us, so obviously they'd severed ties with our family. So whether they divorce or Charlotte gets arrested for assault, it has nothing to do with me. A few days later, I got a call from Jason. Violet, I was wrong. Will you help me? Who is this? Don't be like that. We're siblings, right? I couldn't help but feel it was too late. Turns out Jason was in the hospital. Apparently, Charlotte had broken his arm. This was like something straight out of a comic book. Ever heard the term, you reap what you sow? I'm genuinely sorry. Could you cut me some slack? I can't afford the hospital bills. That's unfortunate. No matter how coldly I brushed him off, Jason kept begging. Please, for the love of God, help me. I'm not God. Is Thomas there? Don't call him by his first name. We're no longer family. My words seemed to hit hard, and Jason was speechless. Switching the call, Thomas took over. After a brief chat, he hung up. Let's go to the hospital. Don't give him a cent. I know. Thomas and I went to the hospital, but not to visit. It's better to say it face to face. Jason pleaded in a polite tone. Please help me. Debt collectors have come to the first floor of the hospital. Their nurse told me. I'm scared to death. But Thomas looked stern. After the insults you and your spouse hurled, it's only natural for us to cut ties. That's not what I meant. Well, if we're not cutting ties, then why disinherit? Disinheritance means cutting family ties. Jason looked down and spoke softly. I apologize for what I've done, but I need your help. I have no one else to turn to. What about Charlotte? We're divorced. A family falling apart, then. She's at the police station for assault. It felt unreal. You repeatedly called my wife an idiot. If I had called Charlotte that, you'd never forgive me. Jason looked troubled. People who spew hate often don't remember what they've said, but those on the receiving end don't forget. I have a good memory. I remember every word you two have said. I have heard it from Charlotte as well. The wife should be properly disciplined by the husband. What does that even mean? Explain it to me. Thomas presses on logically. What did Charlotte mean when she said a wife should lay down her body? Is that even something you should say to a woman? Those are not words you say to a woman. Jason seems to have forgotten not just his own comments, but also those made by Charlotte. Yelling like a little puppy? That's a clear insult. As for my dear wife, you called her a young wannabe or a 50-year-old hag. Don't repeat it. Sorry. Thomas doesn't let up. You said it to me as well. When I asked repeatedly if I should disclaim my inheritance, you told me to stop making you repeat yourself because it's annoying. It's too late for any excuses now. Jason lowers his head on the bed, looking like he's about to cry. I'm really sorry. Can you please find it in your heart to forgive me? No way. Charlotte called my wife an old hag, and you insulted me by saying I'm not mentally sharp. By the way, what does not mentally sharp mean? Explain it to me. Thomas glares at the trembling Jason. Explain it. What? Jason shakes and his eyes go wide with a terrified look. If I weren't in a hospital, I'd be yelling right now. Let's just cut ties off completely. You're the one who said to leave the money and move out quickly. Thomas looks down at the dejected Jason, then turns to me. Shall we go? Yes. After all was said, I thought Thomas might end up offering financial help out of a sense of divine mercy, but he stood his ground. As we left the hospital, a smile crossed my face. I saw your scary side today. There's nothing like that. Be kind to me, okay? Of course. The storm has passed. From now on, I hope for peaceful days, basking in the warmth of spring sunlight.